It's summer 1982. Dominique Dunne is young, talented, and starring in the biggest horror movie of the year. But the real terror isn't on screen, it's in her house. She's in a toxic relationship that will leave her dead by Halloween. This is the story of a brutal murder that shocked Hollywood, and the subsequent courtroom drama that ended with public outrage. Her friends and family would never be the same. That's today on Death in Entertainment.
Live from Los Angeles.
911, what is your emergency?
Here in Hollywood now.
2 counts of murder,
Injury and death.
Oh my God!
Shocking new details.
that has stunned the entertainment world.
This makes me a little nervous.
The hair stood up on my arms.
Just like in the movies.
What do you call this thing anyway?
Death in Entertainment.
Greetings, Deado Universe.
Hello there.
What's going on, everybody? How are you?
I'm good. Are you asking me or the audience?
I'm asking everybody.
Cool, yeah.
The royal we.
They're good. You know, they're here. They're ready to party.
That's right. We are back in the rotation every Wednesday. You're getting a new dose of Death and Entertainment. What's going on, everybody? My name's Kyle Ploof.
And I'm Alejandro Dowling.
And today we're getting into the spooky season, so we got to start going with some creepier stories. And this is definitely one, the case of Dominique Dunne.
Yeah, it is creepy, but also I didn't realize that it is Halloween related.
Yes.
So we'll get there sooner or later. But
Ooh.
first, I think we got to talk about last week's episode.
Yes, if you were one of the people that listened to our episode with Chris Todd on Kurt Cobain's newest murder theory, I didn't realize there was going to be such a backlash, I guess we can say, even from our own regular listeners.
Shannon, for one.
Yeah, she was not very happy.
She loves us, but she said, please don't have that guy on again.
Yeah, I mean, let's be real here. We understand that Chris is a very divisive person. He reached out to us when we did the Natalie Wood episode and told us he had been researching that and has also solved multiple other murders. So he wanted to come on to talk about his newest theory, which was, I don't know if he thinks it's a theory.
No,
but
he thinks it's fact.
Yeah. And, wanted to talk about the Kurt Cobain, not suicide, but murder, and name some names.
And we didn't know going in on purpose. We didn't look up his theory or talk to him about it because we wanted to react in the moment.
Yeah, he kept sending me interviews that he did with other people, and I just kept not watching them.
Yeah.
Because we wanted to be surprised. So we had no idea what was going to come out of his mouth. We knew it would be entertaining, and we knew it might get some people,
riled up,
ruffle their feathers a little bit, but we weren't prepared for the subject of the podcast, the person that Chris was pointing his finger at to be listening to the episode.
Right, we didn't expect that.
So now we're in talks with the son of the alleged suspect and the suspect to see if they would come on. It sounds like they are going to come on the podcast and talk about what they heard.
Which would be excellent.
Yeah.
Because we want all sides here.
Exactly. We're not tied to any specific story. These are just things that we discuss on here.
Personally, I think it was El Duce.
Yeah. And he's gone. So.
Yeah, he can't sue us.
No. And it sounds like Chris is about to get sued by a lot of people regarding the Diddy Kim Porter memoir, which is happening at the same time as this podcast.
Oh my God. Yeah, if you go to our Patreon, he actually broke the story that he's the author, in quotes, behind the Kim Porter, what do you call it, a autobiography from beyond?
Yeah, he says he published it, but did not write it. So that's his story, and he's sticking to it.
But I have to say that we also... Chris graciously gave us his time and met us at the studio, and I still think he's very entertaining.
He is an entertaining guy. So yeah, be on the lookout. We will most likely be talking to the murder suspect in Chris Todd's eyes and his son as well. So
yeah, that'll be cool.
Things will get interesting.
But here's what I'm talking about. Like, where else are you ever going to get into a discussion about Jojo Rabbit possibly being a front for Hollywood so that they can display Hitler paraphernalia at the Oscars?
You won't get that anywhere else.
No, so there you go.
The one thing we didn't get a shout out from Charlemagne the God, but the day after our podcast aired, And he came out and said that he was the author of that book. Charlemagne the God turned Chris Todd into the donkey of the day.
Oh, yes. So we had the donkey of the day on twice lately.
Yeah, exactly.
And reminder that full episode is on our Patreon, and you can also check out our YouTube channel for a snippet of it.
Yes.
Where we talked to him about the book and all things Diddy.
Yeah.
And it gets a little dicey.
Dicey. So without further ado, let's get into this story.
But before we get into the story, I must warn our new listeners that this is a comedy true crime podcast. So we do crack a couple of jokes sometimes.
Mm-hmm. So if laughing isn't your thing when it comes to true crime, go dig another grave.
Let's go. Okay, Dominique Dunne. Not to be confused with Dominique Dunne, her dad.
Wow.
She was born on November 23rd, 1959 in Santa Monica, California. We're familiar with that place.
Santa Monica, going back.
Nice beach.
Yeah.
Where William Holden killed himself with a nightstand.
Yeah, headbanging against the nightstand.
A lot of stuff going on there.
Yeah.
Dominique's parents, I mentioned Dominic Dunne and Ellen Griffin. Her nickname is Lenny. Lenny Griffin.
It's the mom.
Yeah, Lenny Griffin Dunne is the mom.
Okay.
They had 5 kids total, but sadly 2 of them died as newborns.
Jesus.
Yeah, it's very tragic.
That's so scary.
Yeah, I know.
And that's in the 70s and 80s?
That would have been, probably the 50s.
Oh, we're talking the parents.
What do you mean?
So like the parents' siblings.
No, like Dominique's siblings.
In the 50s?
Well, she was born in 1959.
Dominique was?
Yeah. We know she dies, right? This is Death in Entertainment. And she died in the early 80s as a young actress. It's weird to think that her being a young actress then, she was still born in 1959. If you do the math, 20 years is 1979.
Holy
1982,
shit.
21. Yeah.
My young brain. Or my old brain. Jesus.
Your brain, period.
Yeah. What me worry? Me no math.
Yeah, Dominique died when she was 22 years old.
22 when she was born in 59. Wow.
Yep. She was actually about to turn 23 because her birthday is November 4th, and I hinted that she may have died around Halloween. Ooh. But I'm getting way ahead of myself here. I want people to keep listening.
Hit pause.
Because a couple of people are like, all right, we know the whole story. She died in 1982.
That's a wrap. Put a bow on it.
Dominique was considered special, obviously, because there were 2 girls that died before her sisters.
Yeah.
And she was the miracle baby, they called her. And she was born a week late.
Oh, wow. Me too.
You were born a week late?
Yeah, exactly 7 days after my due date.
Oh, wow. That does explain a couple things.
Hello. Duh. He called me special too.
Are you sure it wasn't a month late?
Yeah. 3 months early.
And she was the youngest and only girl. Had 2 brothers, Alex and Griffin. And does the name Griffin Dunne sound familiar to you?
Well, it's the last name of the mom.
Okay, you're not as much of a film buff as me.
Griffin's done.
No, I ain't done yet. He stars in one of my favorite Scorsese movies, After Hours.
Okay.
And you might remember Griffin Dunne as Beta's crush in My Girl.
Oh.
He's the teacher, the adult that she has a crush on. And he's like, Beta, I'm not a pedophile. Griffin Dunne, prominent actor and writer.
Oh.
In fact, Griffin Dunne just wrote an excellent book called The Friday Afternoon Club, which I've gotten a lot of info for this podcast.
Interesting. It's a family memoir.
He lived a crazy life because he was born into a crazy family, which I'm going to tell you about right now. So their dad, Dominic, started out as a stage manager in New York City.
New York City?
And then moved the family to Beverly Hills, where he worked as a producer in TV and film. And his credits include The Boys in the Band, which is the landmark gay film. It was the first one to feature an all-gay cast.
Oh, wow.
And about gay people. Directed by William Friedkin, by the way. And then he produced another movie called Panic in Needle Park with Al Pacino.
Needle Park.
About heroin.
I was going to guess that.
Yeah. And then Ellen, or Lenny, was a ranching heiress. Her family owned the Griffin Wheel Company in Chicago. Dominique's uncle was the writer John Gregory Dunne, who was married to author Joan Didion.
I love Joan Didion.
Do you really?
Yeah, Your Magical Thinking is one of the best books I've ever read.
You know, that's about John Gregory Dunne,
There we go.
the year he died.
Yeah.
And her dealing with all the grief
Yeah.
and processing it.
And people get so mad at that book because they're like, she's just rehashing the same thing over and over. And it's like, that's what grief does.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's considered the quintessential book about the grieving process.
Yeah. I hate when people say meta, but I feel like it very much is.
Yeah. And they had an interesting relationship because they were both prominent writers on their own.
Yeah.
But they also teamed up and they have a kind of a random filmography. They wrote screenplays together. Mm-hmm. One of them was Panic in Needle Park, which their brother Dominic produced.
Wow.
And then they wrote the movie A Star is Born, the Chris Christopherson, R.I.P., by the way.
Yeah.
And Barbara Streisand movie, which some of the Lady Gaga one was based on. Mm-hmm. And then they wrote a movie called Up Close and Personal with Robert Redford and Michelle Pfeiffer. Oh. You would never think Joan Didion wrote that.
Right.
Because it was just like a whatever movie about news media, romantic drama.
Yeah.
Dominic and his brother John didn't get along for most of their life. They had a rivalry, which they did patch things up later.
Oh, good.
But a lot of the time they weren't really speaking. So Dominic and Lenny became socialites in Beverly Hills, and they would throw lavish parties with guests like Warren Beatty, Natalie Wood, Dennis Hopper, and Truman Capote.
Capote. And Jose Menendez?
No, he was a little later.
Oh, okay.
But it's interesting because Dominic didn't end up being a very successful film producer. It really petered out by the late 1970s. So he was considered kind of a has-been. But yet he was always a part of the Beverly Hills social scene. He loved hosting parties, going to dinners. Yet sometimes he wouldn't get the same respect back, even though they're pretty much upper class. The upper class would kind of look down on him.
Yeah.
Yeah, for instance, Truman Capote went to one of his wild parties where there's dancing and coke and whatever else.
It is boring.
And he's like, I should throw parties like this. And so then he did, and he didn't invite Dominic then.
What?
So he was inspired by him socially, but then considered him a pariah.
Ostracized him.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So it's a weird dynamic. And I think that a lot of their money must have come from Lenny because she comes from old money.
She invented the wheel.
Yeah, exactly. And sliced bread.
Wow.
Dominic did come from a wealthy family himself, though, too.
Yeah.
So they're both coming from wealth, but I mean, hers is the wheel. I mean, come on. Goes round and round, her wealth.
Right. All over town.
Either way, it didn't seem like his producing was bearing much fruit because he was always kind of broke. Interesting, right? Like to be upper class, but not really have any money.
Ooh.
So that was the one thing he pretty much put all his effort into was the parties.
Right. Well, that's cool.
And making friends.
He's probably spending all the money in the parties.
Yeah, I'm sure. The kids said that they never had dinner at home. It was either at the Brown Derby or Chasen's.
Well, that's why he's losing money.
Could you imagine?
Just doing lobster dinners every night.
And those are old school haunts.
Yeah.
The places that Dean Martin and Sinatra would go to. They're not going to In-N-Out.
No.
Well, the party scene caught up with him, though, eventually. By 1965, he had become an alcoholic.
Oh, good.
And his personality was belligerent at times. So Ellen asked for a divorce.
Damn, Lenny's out.
Yeah, and so Dominic considered them divorced, but not unmarried. He always called her his wife, never his ex-wife.
She's so like old school money that I just picture her jumping on the top of a penny farthing bike. The one with the huge wheel and the tiny wheel. Just fucking taking off.
Yeah, it's her family, so she always carries around this big wheel.
Yeah.
So you never forget. Maybe Dominic got the other wheel in the divorce.
Yeah. Just the tiny one.
Yeah. And then I have to add that Lenny later suffered from multiple sclerosis.
Wow, that sucks.
And she was confined to a wheelchair.
Fuck.
And so this is the setting that the kids are being brought up in. Dominique, she's the youngest, right? And her older brother, Griffin, is going out there. Like, he wants to become an actor.
Mm.
And he's very interesting himself. I'm going to do an episode on Carrie Fisher soon.
Yeah.
They were apparently best friends.
Oh, no kidding.
So they had their formative years together, and you can imagine what they were up to.
Right.
He said that him and Carrie went to this sex club one time.
Oh.
And it was so dirty that Carrie threw away her dress immediately after leaving the place.
That's dirty.
Yeah, it is. So Dominique really looked up to her brothers because they went to sex clubs with Carrie Fisher. No, but also they were sort of leading the way as older siblings do, right?
Sure.
So Dominique went to Westlake School in Los Angeles.
I was just there today.
Westlake School?
No, just Westlake.
Oh, yeah.
It is so run down now. It is like Skid Row, worse than Skid Row.
No.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's supposed to be like the nice part of town. And this is where they grew up. They were well-to-do, upper class, and now it's just tent city.
So maybe soft white underbelly should move to Westlake.
Yeah, Needle Park is over there.
Then she went on to Taft School in Connecticut because after the divorce, Dominic moved back to New York.
Mm.
And then Lenny stayed in Beverly Hills.
Oh, wow.
So the kids kind of jumped around.
Yeah.
And then after Connecticut, she went to Fountain Valley School in Colorado. So that's a lot of states.
Yeah. The divorce was chilly, so they wanted to be in the weather that was closest to it.
Yeah. Mile high.
I guess so. Carrie Fisher was a mile high all the time.
Oh,
Cocaine.
Jesus.
There was some snow there. They're skiing a little bit.
Yeah, there was a lot of snow there.
Yeah.
And the white stuff that comes from the sky.
Hello!
And then after all that schooling, get this, Dominique went to spend a year in Florence, where she learned to speak Italian. So this is like the movie Sabrina, where Audrey Hepburn goes off to Europe and comes back and is effervescent.
That's like when rich people just go to Europe and they're like, I went to Paris to learn French and become a sommelier. It's like, shut up, you hack.
We would wake up in the morning and make croissants and sit by the Riviera.
Oh, yeah, like the keywords. It's, you guys want to fucking choke somebody.
Like croque monsieur.
Have you ever had chèvre?
And by this point, brother Griffin was a working actor. And then she caught the acting bug.
Ooh.
They say it was that simple for her. She decided to try it, and poof, she was cast in her first movie, a TV movie called Diary of a Teenage Hitchhiker in 1979.
I thought you were saying diarrhea.
No.
Diarrhea teenage hitchhiker.
Oh, God. You don't always hear a lot about Dominique, who she was. She was a fun girl, and that's all I got. No,
oh, wow.
Griffin sheds a little light in the book. I wanted to play a couple excerpts here.
Sure.
Can you play the one where he talks about her love of animals?
I sure can.
Through the phone, I heard the sounds of the abandoned dogs and cats Dominique had rescued over the years as they joined her in the study. Okay, Ethel, calm down, she said to a balding, fat dog with open sores on its back. Wash your hands after you touch that thing. Oh, don't be mean. Ethel's a good girl. There was another dog named Taylor that she picked up off the streets of Boulder, and 3 black cats who'd shown up at different times on our doorstep on Walden, perhaps hearing a rumor that a young girl inside took in boarders.
Very nice.
Wash your hands after you touch that thing. That's Ethel you're talking about, God damn it.
How dare you?
Yeah.
Go back to the sex club in Westlake and then burn your shoes.
Yeah.
And then here's another clip where he talks about the fact that they were the normal ones of the family.
So the burning clothes after sex clubs, that's the normal.
Yes.
Okay.
Dominique and I ended the roundup of our family woes with our usual dark humor and promised to speak the next week. Through no fault of our own, we had been chosen by divine genetics to be spared sickness and addiction, and nothing in our lives, so far, had troubled us like the misfortune of our parents or our brother's battle with sanity. Our dumb luck made us partners, with a mission to support them, plotting ways to make their lives easier. It was possible for us to give Mom hope with news of recent advancements to cure MS, or try to keep Alex relatively earthbound. But our father was on a journey all his own, and with the exception of Dominique paying his last month's rent on South Spalding Drive, even she was powerless to help.
So I thought that showed a lot of insight.
Wow.
She had the weight of the family on her shoulders.
A lot of people do, especially people who want to pursue different things. There's a reason why I feel like a lot of people go into the arts and, not just jump into a 9-to-5, because that's a very structured lifestyle. And people who don't have the structure often go into acting or music or podcasting.
Yeah. You don't say.
Yeah.
And also think of the shame that Dominic felt after being sort of a failed producer while her career is starting to go.
Yeah.
And the embarrassment at not being able to pay his bills.
Yeah, that's
when he had been hanging around Warren Beatty and Hollywood's elite for years and still does.
It's brutal that, it seemed like he was trying to show off and spent way too much money on eating out and parties and, trying to keep up with the Joneses, and the Joneses weren't inviting him to their parties.
Exactly.
It's brutal.
The Joneses were probably talking shit about him behind his back.
He must have been doing something or being weird or...
No, but mind you, he would do the same thing to the Joneses.
Yeah.
That's why people loved him, because he was what they call a gossip queen.
Oh.
So he always had stories.
So, people would go there to be entertained by this guy, but they're like, I don't want him to come into my place because he'll start gossiping about me.
Exactly.
Okay.
Did you hear about Susan?
Now I understand.
Apparently, her facelift went south.
Yeah.
Or something.
Oh, man.
Dominique also had the weight of keeping up with everyone because she's the youngest.
Yeah.
Growing up in this world where there's witty repartee and intellectual conversations.
People going to Florence.
Pop culture references.
Yeah. Right.
She has to keep up herself.
Yeah, it's crazy if you're the youngest and then you start looking around you as you get older and you're like, oh my God, nobody knows what the hell's going on.
Exactly.
Nobody has their shit together. Oh my God.
Like, how did we do this?
Yeah. How do we stay alive?
Yeah. Another interesting thing I read is that Dominic was beaten up by his father for being a sissy.
Oh, shades of Aaron Hernandez.
Yeah. And Alex, her brother, not Griffin, the other one, he had similar traits to Dominic in the sense that Dominic used to say, hey, did you see the movie Shane with Jack Palance? It was so cool. Did you see the part where they did this? And then Alex would do the same thing when he saw a movie, his own kid. And so Dominic wouldn't beat him, but he would be like, shut up. Nobody cares. And so Griffin asked him, why are you so hard on Alex? And then he said, because he reminds me of myself. So it's just repeats.
Damn.
Except a little better, right? Because he's not beating them.
Yeah.
So by the next generation, maybe they won't be even the insults then.
God.
It's dysfunctional, but yet there is love between them all.
It just seems weird that this guy's like in the arts and also a very chatty Cathy and being sassy to someone that reminds him of himself.
He's a catty daddy.
Was there something going on? I wonder.
We may unravel a few more layers to this saga.
Uh-oh.
Let's get back to Dominique.
Okay.
Because Griffin, he's out in New York working.
Yeah.
He's on a trajectory. And suddenly she's on a trajectory out of nowhere.
It's great.
So after that first TV movie, she just does a bunch of other TV shows. Credits include Fame. Every young actor in the early 80s was on Fame.
Yeah.
If you weren't on Fame, you weren't a young actor. You were either in Fame or one of the Friday the 13th movies.
There you go.
And then Lou Grant, you remember that one? That was a spin-off of Mary Tyler Moore.
Oh, okay.
With Ed Asner.
Yeah.
And then Heart to Heart with Daddy Wagner.
Ooh, yes.
And of course, Natalie Wood was a family friend.
Mm-hmm.
So less than 2 years into her career, Dominique is cast in her first and only major motion picture, Poltergeist, directed by Tobe Hooper. And also directed by Steven Spielberg.
Whoa.
They say that he might have directed it. And the credit, there was a contract clause where the credit had to go to Tobe Hooper, who did Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah, exactly.
But of course, Tobe denied that.
Wow. Well, I'd deny that too if I didn't actually do it.
But one thing that is clear is it's a classic movie.
Yeah, that's true.
So let's take a look at a scene that features Dominique.
Mm-hmm.
This is a scene that shows they're such a silly family at the breakfast table.
Okay.
You are so obnoxious. You drive me nuts. He's stoned. Oh, yeah. What do you know about it? More than you. Ask Dad. Ask Dad. Ask Dad. Ask Dad. Hey! It's not my mess. Thanks a lot, Jerko. I got class in 20 minutes.
All right, so you just heard her in character as Dana Freeling, the teenage daughter in a family that's haunted by a bunch of demonic spirits.
Yes.
And Coach was in there too.
Craig T. Nelson.
Craig T. When I was a kid, I'm like, what the fuck is he doing in this horror movie? That's Coach.
That is Coach.
The movie opened on June 11th, 1982 to wide acclaim in packed theaters. Guess what opened a week later?
What?
E.T.
Ooh.
Exactly 1 week later.
Another Spielberg.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? I guess they weren't in competition because one's a horror movie and then one's
a family affair.
And then one's about demons.
Yeah.
No, but it was considered suburban dreams versus suburban nightmares.
Ah, I like that.
So they really weren't in competition because E.T., of course, was like the #1 movie of the year and the decade.
Yeah.
But Poltergeist went on to gross $76 million in 1982 money.
Ooh.
And it was one of the top grossing movies of the year. It went on to spawn 2 sequels. Sadly, Dominique would not be alive to reprise her role.
That's not good.
Her disappearance was explained that she went off to college.
Oh, wow. She'll be there for a while.
Yeah. Kind of like Valerie on the Hogan Family. Like, oh, sorry, mom suddenly died in a car crash. So now you have this blonde lady as your new mommy.
Oh, boy.
Okay, so what happened? You must be thinking.
I am thinking.
What went wrong for Dominique Dunne? Because everything is going so right.
Yeah.
Well, in 1981, she met a chef named John Sweeney.
Ooh, what's he cooking up?
And he worked at Ma Maison.
Oh.
A hip West Hollywood eatery.
Oh, there's so many people are like, have you been to Mama Soul?
Like Anthony Bourdain, remember that episode we were talking about? He worked at Les Halles. And he loved oysters and croque monsieur, eggs floricar. I would love to know what the hell they're talking about, those fancy chefs. Like,
yeah, it's food.
Yeah, I guess.
Just shut up and eat it.
Ma Maison had an unlisted phone number so that no common people could find it.
Peasantry.
So John Sweeney was the oldest of 6 children. That's a complete difference to Dominique. His parents also were divorced. And listen to this, his mom was a battered wife. Oof. His dad had been very abusive to her.
Jeez.
Sweeney had no car or a driver's license. Oh, and he was broke.
Oh, good.
So their romance escalated quickly because Dominique's like, hey, I'm doing well.
Yeah.
I have a feature film.
Yeah, she's like, what do you bring to the table? And he's like, Le Morceau. She's like, sold. That's all you need. This guy also is ahead of his time. He looks exactly like Chris Parnell and Will Ferrell tied together. They had a love child together.
And then beaten with an ugly stick.
Yes. Beaten with a baguette.
Yeah. He's like, you have money, but I can make you steak au poivre. You see how long my baguette is?
Hey, don't mind the sesame seeds.
So they rented a 1-bedroom house near the restaurant at 8723 Rangeley Avenue in West Hollywood. Might we add that to one of our tours one day?
Yes.
Perhaps. It soon became clear that their moving in together was a mistake because Sweeney became extremely possessive of her. He would never leave her alone, even tagging along uninvited to her horse riding lessons and acting classes.
Oh, God. Don't you have anything better to do?
To be, and then he's like, not to be. He'd get jealous of her scene partners.
Oh, God.
Is there anything more pathetic than that?
Jesus.
Like they're trying to put on Romeo and Juliet. And he's like, hey, stop with the touching.
Hey, goddamn Montague.
He would pick fights with her in the wee hours of the morning. She wrote this in her journal. Quote, when we are good, we are great. And when we are bad, we are horrendous. The bad outweighs the good.
All too common, unfortunately.
We've heard about a couple toxic relationships before.
Yeah.
The situation got worse and turned into physical abuse. For months, Dominique didn't tell anybody about the violence. When Sweeney joined Dominique in New York City, summer 1982, the summer of Poltergeist, to meet her dad and brothers who were living there at the time, Dominic, the dad, recalls that he was very off-putting, that he was way more into her than she was to him. And her brother Alex flat out didn't like him.
Damn.
And he cited this one incident after their dad went home. They were at the bar still, and a man recognized her from Poltergeist.
Oh, wow.
And he called out her famous line, "What's happening?" In fact, why don't we listen to that famous line?
What's happening? What's happening?
What's happening?
Yeah, that was the big quote of the summer, I guess. Besides, E.T. phone home.
Hey, Milton, what's happening?
So someone yells that out there at the bar, all in good fun.
Yeah.
But when Sweeney returned from the bathroom, he was enraged and grabbed the man and shook him.
What the fuck?
Alex, her brother, said that was very unsettling.
What's happening? This is what's happening. I'm shaking you now. What a fucking weirdo.
He's like, I'm going to shake you like one of my creme brulees.
Like a Jello jiggler.
And then Dominic met them for lunch at a French restaurant.
Oh, France.
The next day, you know, his bread and butter, so to speak.
Yes, Paris.
Dominic waited. He had time to have a couple of Perriers in the meantime.
How well I remember.
And then they showed up late. And it was apparent that Dominique had been crying.
Oh.
The chef at this restaurant was excited to talk to Sweeney because I guess he was up and coming in the culinary world.
Yes.
And they even spoke together in a bit of French.
Oh, parlez-vous.
And then the owner said, like, we are going to give you a special today. And so he brings out some food for them.
Yeah, and she's crying into her soup.
But then the
Red Bull.
The rest of the lunch was tense, according to Dominic.
Mademoiselle, you are too pretty to cry in this French cafe.
Yeah. So let's hear about Dominic's impression of him.
Okay.
The clip, Dominic.
Oh. I'm like, okay, let's hear it.
Did you know the guy before this happened? Had you met him?
Oh, yeah. Met him, and none of us liked him.
Ooh.
And, you know, he thought it was because it was a class thing, that he was the whatever, and he thought we were this. But that wasn't why. There was something creepy about this guy. But women liked him.
Women?
I hate that.
I think it's just woman. Guy was a creep.
You've seen it before, though.
Yeah.
There's some guys, like Simon Monjack. He got several women that go along with his follies.
That's true.
It's really disgusting.
Folie à deux. Back to France. Movie is terrible.
Sweeney later told Dominic that he wanted to quit Ma Maison and open his own restaurant in Melrose Park with the backing of some French and Japanese investors.
Oh.
When the couple returned to Los Angeles, all hell broke loose. One night, Dominique fled to her mom Lenny's house in a terrified state with clumps of her hair missing.
Fuck.
Sweeney showed up right behind her, pounding on the doors and windows. Lenny yelled out that she would call the police if he didn't leave, and he finally complied.
And she's in a wheelchair. Like, this guy thinks he's tough showing up to beat up his girlfriend and her mom who's dying of MS.
Ugh.
What a fucking scumbag.
Oh, this is, I mean, there's the shit list.
This is beyond.
But I think Sweeney might be at the top of the all-time shit list.
Yeah.
Wait till you hear it.
Oh, boy.
A month later, there was another major altercation. Sweeney went ballistic during yet another argument and started choking her, and he threw her to the ground with a violent thud. Friends who happened to be there witnessed the entire incident. And he played it off as a big misunderstanding.
Oh, you don't understand.
She talked back to me.
Yeah.
She got lippy with me.
You know how we do in France.
And he's not even French is the annoying part.
Yeah. He's Irish, Sweeney.
Yeah, he's just some fucking schlub who somehow learned to cook.
Mm-hmm.
You can imagine him putting the little parsley garnish on top of the plate.
Yeah.
And yet he's this horribly violent man. Like, how do you have patience if you're him to make it in the high cuisine world?
I mean, it's all assholes that.
I guess you're right, actually.
Yeah.
You do make a good point. Now I'm looking back, I'm thinking of like Mario Batali. Even Anthony Bourdain admitted he was an asshole.
Yeah, you got to be a total prick, at least to start.
So Sweeney tried to play it all off, and he's like, okay, let's go to bed. Then Dominique snuck out of the bathroom window and made a beeline for her car when Sweeney had seemingly fallen asleep. But he heard the commotion and followed her outside, jumping on her hood in order to stop her. When he stepped off, she hit the gas and drove away.
Yeah, good plan.
Enough was enough. Dominique was done. She broke up with Sweeney by telephone, and he moved out of their house.
Wow.
On Rangeley Avenue. And then she had the locks changed. Dominique was eager to move on with her life.
I would be the person to move out if I were her. You can't stay in the place that he knows where you are. At that point, if he's being violent and that much of a psychopath, you got to go someplace else.
Yeah, well, hindsight 2020.
Yeah. To anybody out there, don't stay in your own house. I mean, this is what Joseph Barcy did too.
Mm-hmm.
They stayed home. He knew exactly where they were and did what he did to the whole family. So, God, just get away.
And there's another ugly guy.
Yeah.
You got John Sweeney, Joseph Barcy. And they get these women to date them and marry them.
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus Christ.
What are we all doing wrong here?
October 30th, 1982. Dominique Dunne and actor David Packer are running lines together for a new sci-fi miniseries called V. They're hanging out at her house.
Hey, that's where Robert Englund came from, too.
Oh, really?
Yep.
So David is her co-star.
Mm-hmm.
Production had already started, so they got a couple scenes in the can, and they're scheduled to continue filming the next day. At one point, Dominique is talking to a friend on the phone when she hears that somebody else is listening in on their call. Oh, God, it's Sweeney. Let me get rid of him.
Jeez.
Apparently, he was able to get the operator to break into the phone line. Minutes later, around 9 p.m., David and Dominique are startled by loud pounding at the door. It's Sweeney. He's shown up unannounced, and he demands to be let into the house. He later testified that he was desperate to reconcile their relationship. He had walked out of Ma Maison about half an hour earlier.
Ma Maison?
And proceeded on foot to the house.
Wow.
A coworker said he drank 2 martinis before leaving.
Oh,
God, I hate this guy.
Where he gets violent and starts smacking women. I'm going to have a martini. I'm about to slap some people around here. Give me 2 martinis, please.
Dominique is mortified at the unfolding events. At first, she talks to him through the safety of the locked door, but he refuses to go away.
So call the cops.
She then goes outside to talk to him on the porch.
Good God.
So as not to cause a further scene in front of her acting colleague. As usual, the conversation turns violent. David Packer is frightened and locks the door.
Oh, my God. He locks her out?
Yes.
These fucking actors, man.
After hearing smacking sounds and screams, he calls 911, but is told their area is out of their jurisdiction. So then he leaves a message on his friend's answering machine saying, "If I get murdered tonight, John Sweeney did it."
He's worried about himself?
Yeah.
He's inside with the door locked, being like, someone's going to murder me. What's wrong with these people?
And he doesn't have a murder weapon, mind you. There's no knife or gun.
He's going to slap me to death. He's had 2 martinis at Ma Maison.
Now terrified, Packer runs into the bedroom and hides.
Oh, God, I want to slap this guy so bad.
Meanwhile, outside, Sweeney is strangling Dominique with such force that she loses consciousness. She would never wake up. The coroner would testify that the fatal strangulation lasted between 4 and 6 minutes.
While David Packer's on the phone with his friend.
David Packer eventually makes his exit and sees Sweeney kneeling over Dominique's lifeless body. He then makes a second emergency call, and this one does go through successfully. Some reports say that Sweeney is the one who told him to call the police the second time.
Wow. What did he step over her body twice to be like, oh, I got to go back inside and make a call?
I don't usually throw the word coward around.
This is the most cowardly of cowards.
There are moments in your life when you can step up.
Yeah.
And rise to the occasion.
It takes less numbers than calling your friend to call 911.
The call didn't go through like, oh, okay, no problem. I'm going to call my friend now and tell him that I may be dead later.
Oh, my God. And waiting for the answering machine to pick up and then listening to the full, like, hey, you've reached whoever.
Right, and those were in
we can't come to the phone right now. If you'd like to leave a message, wait till after the beep. Like, how fucking long?
People would get creative with it, too.
Oh, the radio would be on. They'd be like, hello? And then turn it down and be like, we got you. Leave a message after the beep.
Hey, we're the Robinsons. And then the little kid would come on like, hi, I'm Jimmy.
Yeah.
We're not home right now. And you just want to fucking kill yourself?
Yeah.
And imagine being the friend that got David Packer's message. Like, what? And then you call him like, oh, no, I'm fine.
Oh, you saw her getting choked and you called me? I'd be like, what the fuck are you calling me for? I'm looking it up. This guy's 5'8", and I do have some compassion for men that just don't feel like they can defend themselves. I can't even imagine what that would feel like.
Figures.
Yeah, to just be like, oh, I'm scared of another man. Like, unless it's a 10-foot tall dude, I'm not fucking scared of anybody.
No, but then usually there's the small man syndrome where they think they're 8 feet tall.
Yeah, exactly.
This guy didn't have that.
Yeah, this guy was not a pit bull at all.
He accepted his
little chihuahua.
Yeah.
He's just like, I'm dead. Somebody help me. A woman's being choked to death in front of me. Is anyone going to help me, though?
So cops arrive on the scene.
Oh, good.
Thanks to David Packer's very late second call. While being arrested, Sweeney confesses to the crime, saying, quote, man, I blew it. I killed her. I didn't think I choked her that hard, but I don't know. I just kept on choking her. I just lost my temper and blew it again. He also tells the cops that he tried to kill himself.
What, did he start choking himself? I just passed out.
No, this is so unbelievable. He claims he ran inside and ate sleeping pills. And there's no evidence that he ever ingested any pills that night.
He wasn't sleeping.
But he actually told them that to gain sympathy.
That's exactly what that is.
So on October 31st, 1982, Halloween.
Bum, bum, bum.
Dad Dominic got the call that his daughter was near death at Cedars-Sinai. So he started working out plans with his son Griffin, who lived a few blocks away at the time in New York City. And then Dominic flies out first, and then Griffin goes to tell his brother Alex about it, and they fly out right after him together. As Dominic was packing, he hesitated when he got to his black suit and tie, because he thought if he packed that was bad luck. Because he didn't want to pack for a funeral necessarily.
Yeah. No.
Griffin describes the eeriness of arriving in Beverly Hills on Halloween and seeing all the macabre costumes. So he saw a bunch of people trick-or-treating with axes through their heads and fangs bleeding blood and monsters.
Yep.
And he said that the images disturbed him because of what happened to Dominique and that he would never be able to celebrate Halloween again.
Yeah.
He said the really sad part is that him and Dominique shared a macabre sense of humor.
Yeah.
So it was something he had to let go of because it was so close to his life at that point. It's only fun if you've never experienced the violence in your own life.
Yeah. When real shit happens, you kind of heard over the trivializing of it.
Which is odd that Ashton Kutcher, after witnessing Ashley Elleren's body at the crime scene, less than a year later did a whole dead body prank on the Punk'd pilot.
Yeah, exactly. That's a little much.
So there are two extremes going on here.
Yeah.
Friends and family of the Dunne family gathered at Lenny's house on Crescent Drive. And, you know, they were just all there for them. And they had a big community through all the years of parties and whatnot. And this was kind of funny. They said that there was a person that was there out of the blue offering condolences, and they made a delicious meatloaf.
Oh.
And Lenny was hungry, hadn't cooked, so they had that for dinner. And then they were like, who was that? We should send a thank you note. And then everyone was like, I don't know. I've never seen that person in my life.
Oh, my God.
So they had no idea who that was.
What? They still haven't found out?
You know.
Wow.
And meanwhile, at the hospital, Dominique was on life support, showing no brain activity.
God.
And a bolt was inserted into her skull to relieve pressure on her brain. When the Dunne family arrived, they randomly ran into the actor George Hamilton, the really tan guy.
Oh, yeah.
Who was there supporting his brother, who was also in the ICU.
Wow.
And George Hamilton is like, Dominic, great to see you. And Dominic is like, yeah, nice to see you too, George. Like, not in the mood.
Yeah. God.
That's Hollywood.
Showbiz, baby.
Also, there was Ken Johnson, the director of the pilot she was working on. There was this measly young man staring at them from across the room.
Oh, David Packer?
His eyes blood red from crying. And Griffin started to feel uncomfortable because the staring was so intense. And then they found out that was David Packer.
Did you guys know I almost got killed? By the way, how's your daughter? What this guy. Ugh.
And so family enters the room. Dominic says that at first he didn't realize that the person in the bed was his daughter because there were tubes everywhere and she was kind of like jerking grotesquely. Her eyes were wide open, bugged out like a cartoon.
Oh, God.
Really large. And her head had been shaved to insert that bolt.
Yeah.
And then her neck was all purple and swollen.
Ugh.
And then also visible were the marks, from the strangulation. And that he said it was nearly impossible to look at her, but also impossible to look away.
Yeah.
And then the doctor told them that the brain scan was showing no life, but they had to take 3 more scans so that in the upcoming trial, the defense couldn't claim that they removed her from life support too soon.
Yeah.
It's all protocol at this point. But yet the family held on to that hope.
Yeah, there's no way.
That unfortunately nobody else has in the real world. But it's that thing where, like we've all dealt with this before. Like, when somebody is on life support like this, it's like you just never lose hope. You always, you pray for a miracle.
Yeah.
You just can't let go. But even though the truth is that they're basically already dead.
Yeah. I just Googled this. Has anyone ever come back from no brain activity? And it's a hard no.
Jesus.
Damn.
And then it was starting to sink into everyone that they were now dealing with a murder because John Sweeney was arrested for attempted murder.
Yeah.
And they hadn't even grappled with the thought of the trial at this point. On day 4, everyone said their goodbyes and Dominique was taken off life support. Her kidneys were donated to 2 patients who were already at the hospital waiting. And then her heart was transported to a hospital in San Francisco. So, like Tony Bennett once sang, she left her heart in San Francisco.
Oh, boy.
You were supposed to pick that up for me.
I didn't get it.
In the LA Times, the owner of Ma Maison, Patrick Terrell, described Sweeney as a very dependable young man.
What?
And that he would obtain the best legal representation for him.
What the fuck are we talking about?
Oddly, he said nothing about the victim.
What? What is wrong with people?
And Sweeney's representation ended up being a well-regarded public defender named Michael Adelson. But he was assisted by a bigger lawyer named Joseph Shapiro, who, get this, was the legal counsel for Ma Maison.
Wow.
Fred Leopold, a family friend and former mayor of Beverly Hills, told the Dunnes during a condolence call that he had heard from a secretary in his office that Sweeney had severely beaten another woman a year or so earlier.
Oh, thanks for the heads up.
You said, oh no, Sweeney only convinced this one girl to date him. No, he had a string of women and he beat them all.
What a fucking coward, man. I hate these guys that think they're tough because they beat girls up.
Yeah, it's so despicable. They passed on as much info as they could to Detective Harold Johnston, who was handling the case and who the family regarded very highly. And the Ma Maison owner also told Detective Johnston that he only saw Sweeney act violently one time, when he punched a telephone booth during a trip to France. Like, what the fuck?
God.
What did you call me? The funeral was held on Saturday, November 6th, 1982, at the Good Shepherd Church. And the family nicknamed the church Our Lady of the Cadillacs because of all the fancy cars that they would see in the parking lot and the Hollywood clientele that would go there.
Oh, isn't that sweet?
For example, brother Alex got really excited when he was a kid and they were at church one Sunday, and standing in front of him was Cesar Romero.
Oh,
who played Joker
as the Joker
on their favorite series at the time, Batman.
Yeah.
And who Diddy impersonated on Halloween before he was arrested.
Yeah.
Not Heath Ledger, it was Cesar Romero.
Yeah.
So get this. They were trying to deal with the Monsignor there, who apparently was a drunkard. So he was barely paying attention to the family when they were going over the funeral plans. And he didn't remember Dominique at all, or the family. And then they started mentioning celebrity friends, and that's when he perked up, like, oh, yes. So he was just a star fucker.
What a piece of shit.
Yeah. And then they show up for the funeral that Saturday, and guess what? It's double booked because there's a wedding going on at the exact same time.
Oh, just put her body between the...
And the wedding party doesn't want to change their time. So then the Dunne family has to change the funeral start time to an hour later.
Just an hour?
Yeah. Well, weddings are pretty quick, aren't they?
I don't know.
It's not like that's where the reception is held.
I guess, but the whole to-do, people throwing rice, dragging the cans.
Who throws rice anymore? It's so messy.
Well, back in the 80s.
Oh, you're right. That's true. I mean, what is this? The Rocky Horror Picture Show?
Yeah. Let's do the time warp.
So, in a wicked twist of fate, the groom was Sweeney's friend.
Kill him, too.
God.
This is ridiculous.
And then, of course, the family was accosted by the press while trying to arrive for the funeral.
Yeah, that's fun.
The night before, Dominique had coincidentally appeared on 2 previously scheduled TV shows. And then Dominic, her dad, also noticed that a film he produced that had never been played on television before was also playing that night. And then there was also a film that his brother had written that had never played on television before that night.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that they didn't watch any of them. But that's sort of
interesting.
Also fateful, right?
Sure.
Dominique would posthumously appear on the hit TV show Hill Street Blues in an episode titled Requiem for a Hairbag. It aired on November 18th, 1982, and she plays a teen victim of parental abuse who decides to give up her baby for adoption out of fear of repeating the cycle of abuse. And listen to this. Reportedly, her character's bruises were the real deal.
Oh, my God.
So they didn't have to use much makeup.
Oh, that's good.
Could you imagine a makeup artist got excited for injuries like that? Like you show up to Friday the 13th, part 5.
Yeah.
And you have an axe through your head.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah, cool, man. That really cuts down on her in the time in the makeup chair.
Yeah, I can go drink now. Jesus.
We have a clip of that episode.
Yes.
It's disturbing. I just want to warn everyone.
Yeah, what do you want?
Is this your baby?
I don't know nothing about a baby.
Well, the lady downstairs says she's seen you with...
She's crazy.
What is it? What's wrong here?
It's nothing, Mama.
What's the little whore done now?
I didn't do nothing.
We're looking for the mother of this abandoned
No.
child.
Hold it!
I'm gonna kill her! You dumped the baby, you little crap!
Oh, what?
In the street 15 years ago, you want your mother. You got your mother!
I love 80s TV. It was so subtle. They really let the tension build.
Yeah.
They're like, we heard you're an abusive mom, you little whore.
Yeah, that's fun.
Lenny and Dominic watched that episode of Hill Street Blues, and they didn't talk during it or cry. They just stared at the TV set. They noticed how young she looked.
Yeah, she looks like a teenager. That's why I was so surprised that she was born in 59. I thought she was like 15.
Yeah. And Dominic also wrote about an incident in which he was mugged leaving the subway sometime after the funeral when he went back to New York City in Times Square. And he channeled all his rage at Sweeney and screamed at the assailant, who half-assed tried to cut him with the knife and then dropped the weapon and ran off. So the guy goes up to him like, give me all your money. And then Dominic is like, fuck you. And he scares the guy.
Oh, so he didn't actually get robbed?
No, he said that he got to keep his life and his wallet because he had such an animalistic rage at that moment.
Well, yeah.
Basically imagining Sweeney's face on the mugger's face.
Yeah. They go for easy targets.
Yeah.
And if you really give it back to them and scare them, they'll run away.
Right. And then the thought occurred to him that mourning had to be postponed until justice prevailed. So they didn't even have time to really process everything because they have to go after Sweeney.
Yeah.
Who is up for murder charges, not attempted murder charges anymore.
Yeah, which I don't understand. It's like, even if you try to kill somebody, I don't think attempted murder should be, I mean, maybe it should be the name of the charge, but it should be just as punishable as murder, because why are you getting less time for not completing your objective? Like, that's not necessarily on you. You could shoot someone and they could either die or not die. You still tried to kill them.
So do you think the 1993 terrorists for the World Trade Center should be charged the same as the 2001 terrorists?
Yes.
Okay.
They all get virgins.
Jesus. You make a good point.
Like, it doesn't matter.
Like
if
they meant to murder, right?
Yeah.
Like,
it's like you get out of prison after attempted murder, relatively quickly, as opposed to staying in jail for life. And it's like, I almost had you. But thank God you survived, because now I'm out, baby.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it is kind of a mark.
Yeah.
So let's get into some of the pre-trial nonsense. Presiding over the case was Judge Burton Katz, and he's another fame whore. Wears designer clothes, plays to the audience like he's a talk show host.
Oh, God.
One time a People magazine photographer showed up in court, and he had him take all kinds of different pictures of him and said, like, hey, are these glasses better or should I wear these?
Oh, he pulls up his gown, his dick's out. How about this?
He's got a bucket of popcorn.
Here comes the judge.
You hungry? So the jury consisted of 9 men and 3 women, which is unfortunate. I would have hoped that it had more women.
Yeah.
I don't know why the law works the way it works, but...
I mean, that's on the prosecution for not fighting for more women.
Yeah. And the judge would constantly mispronounce Dominique's name, calling her by her dad's name, Dominic.
Oh, God.
And Sweeney showed up in black, clutching a Bible with crocodile tears. And then he claimed that other prisoners were harassing him.
Yeah, because you're a woman killer.
They're being mean.
Why can't they be more like David Packer and leave me alone?
He's like, I don't want to make light of the situation, but that worked out pretty good.
Yeah, David.
He didn't even try to fight me or anything.
Nothing.
He basically said, here, go do your thing.
I had to ask him to call 911.
When Dominic returned to L.A. for the trial, he drove around in his daughter's electric blue convertible Volkswagen. You would think maybe this was as a tribute to her, something to feel her spirit.
No, he's broke.
Thank you. That was the real reason.
My God, man.
He couldn't afford to rent a car.
Get it together, man.
And in the glove compartment, he found her Annie Hall sunglasses, as she called them, and kept them close to him throughout the trial.
Oh, that's just nice.
Attorney Adelson, on the defense side, offered them a plea bargain that at first the family accepted. Then he reneged on the offer and opted for a trial. Then a couple days before jury selection, they were offered yet another plea bargain through a third-party journalist.
What?
Yeah, someone came up to them like, we have a message from Adelson that Sweeney would plead guilty to a reduced charge of manslaughter and would serve 7.5 years.
What are we talking about?
But then he would want the assault charge based on the attack on Dominique weeks before the murder dropped. Adelson viewed the situation as a tragedy. Quote, a blue-collar kid who got mixed up in Beverly Hills society and couldn't handle it. There was even a suggestion that Dominique was a participant in the crime.
Oh, my God.
Neighbors would be called to testify that they heard fights between them all the time. I don't know, that they were both yelling or something along those lines.
That is the definition of victim blaming right there.
And then every day, attorney Adelson would call Dominic Mr. Sweeney. Hey, Mr. Sweeney, nice to see you. And then Dominic would be like, no, I'm Dominique's father. It's Dominique Dunne. Oh, I'm sorry. Then the next morning, hey, how you doing there, Mr. Sweeney? Jesus. And he knows that this was done on purpose to throw him off. I mean, is that not a douchebag thing to do?
Yeah.
And then get this, attorney Adelson made a request that Lenny, the mom, not be allowed to sit in the courtroom because her wheelchair would create undue sympathy. Can you believe that?
What the fuck are we talking about?
Yeah, it's like, sorry, you're disabled. That's too sad. So we don't want the jury to be swayed.
Yeah.
Of course, that one didn't go through. She was allowed to attend the trial.
Good.
Stephen Barship was assigned on the prosecution side by the DA of LA County. And you know what was interesting? As the trial was starting to get underway, a bunch of groupies would show up at the courthouse.
Sweeney groupies?
No, like just groupies for crime.
Oh, dark tourism.
Yeah, old people from Santa Monica, and they would watch murder trials. And Dominic overheard a couple of them talking, saying, no, what's this one about? Oh, it's some girl named I don't even remember. I've never heard of her. And he said for some reason that made him laugh, kind of like in a dark way, like how ridiculous it all was.
Jesus.
So they brought in a witness named Lillian Pierce, who was a former girlfriend of Sweeney's. She said he beat her on 10 separate occasions, and she was hospitalized twice. Sweeney broke her nose, punctured her eardrum, and collapsed her lung. He would throw rocks at her when she tried to escape from him. She'd also seen him foam at the mouth, and he would smash furniture and pictures. And then Adelson tried to paint her as a party girl who was probably very drunk during the alleged attacks. And then Barship on the prosecution side started to question her about her family's wealth, thus setting up a pattern that Sweeney targeted rich girls. This enraged Sweeney, thus setting up a pattern that Sweeney targeted rich girls. This enraged Sweeney, and for the first time during the trial, he lost his cover of cool. He leapt out of his chair and lunged towards the back of the courtroom. A group of armed guards wrestled with him and then handcuffed him to his chair. Sweeney let out a burst of tears and apologized. Judge Katz comforted him. Quote, we know what a strain you're under, Mr. Sweeney.
What? This isn't real.
And then it gets worse. Unfortunately, this outburst was not witnessed by the jury because they weren't there that day.
How do they have a trial without a jury there?
No, get this. They considered her testimony prejudicial.
Wow.
Because it could influence the jury.
Yeah, it should. That's what the whole trial's about, is influencing a jury one way or the other.
There are rumors that Sweeney was medically sedated for the rest of the court proceedings after that incident.
How was he allowed to be?
Another time, Lenny took the stand and described the night Dominique came to her house crying after being beaten up by Sweeney. She said that she had been in the fetal position in the hallway and talked about the clumps of her hair being pulled out. And then Adelson made an unsubstantiated charge that the argument that night had been over an abortion.
Jesus.
Judge Katz dismissed Lenny's testimony as hearsay, and it was not admissible in court. So he deemed Lenny's and Lillian Pierce's testimonies as prejudicial, saying that the prejudicial effect outweighed the probative value. And Lillian Pierce, the ex-girlfriend, would only be allowed to take the stand in rebuttal if Adelson put expert witnesses up, meaning psychiatrists, to talk about how Sweeney was mentally impaired by emotion and couldn't have formed the intent to kill. So basically, they could only be put up there if they said Sweeney was insane. And so after that, Adelson threw out his psychiatric defense. Because he's like, oh, cool. Because now that means the jury won't have to hear those important testimonies.
Right.
Which are very important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Almost the key to the whole thing.
Yes, it shows a pattern.
But Judge Katz granted Adelson's request that all statements made by Dominique to her agent, her fellow actors, and her friends regarding her fear of John Sweeney during the last weeks of her life also be considered hearsay, and they were ruled inadmissible as evidence. So you couldn't have anybody go up there and say that she was afraid for her life.
I mean, it technically is hearsay, but you should be able to hear that because it is first-hand account.
You know, it's a wacky system.
Oh, God.
One fateful afternoon, Dominic was introduced to Vanity Fair editor Tina Brown during a casual lunch with friends. She told him that she admired his work and believed that he could be a great writer. Brown encouraged him to keep a journal during the trial, and maybe it could be published someday.
What is everyone's obsession with helping this fucking guy?
No, sorry, this is Dominic.
Oh, Dominic.
Yeah.
Well, even that, too.
No, hold on. And maybe it could be published someday. Dominic picked up his notepad and never looked back. The trial begins. Do you have a problem with the dad taking notes at his daughter's trial?
In preparation for selling it?
No, in telling the world what happened.
Oh, God.
Remember how mad you were at Rebecca Schaefer's mom writing a one-woman play?
Yes. God, these people.
The trial began in August 1983. Stephen Barship, the prosecution, in his opening argument, he began with a description of Sweeney as 27, 6'1", 170 pounds, and Dominique, 22, 5'1", 112 pounds. And then he gave a rundown of the charges and, you know, the actual assault that happened on September 26th and then the night of the murder on October 30th. And he demonstrated with a stopwatch how long the strangulation lasted. So he said, I want you guys to understand that. So he pushed start. The room sat silent for a full 4 minutes.
That's great.
The only sound during the 4 minutes came from attorney Michael Adelson and John Sweeney, who whispered together the entire time. So they didn't even observe that silence.
And during that silence, the judge should be shitting his pants like, damn, this is a long ass time. And it's between 4 and 6 minutes. So they were on the low end of the spectrum too.
And it was still powerful to just do 4 minutes.
Oh, after like 30 seconds, you're like, wow.
Imagine sitting there for 4 minutes and realizing she was being strangled that whole time.
Yeah.
In Milwaukee, in one of my film classes back in the day, we had to watch this experimental film that was 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And all it was a countdown of 20 minutes.
Oh, God.
So it was like 1958, 1957.
Yeah, that's 20 minutes of my life I'll never get back.
And I had to pee the entire time. I'll never forget it.
Oh, I would have pissed on the floor after that.
I mean, the Irishman seemed short compared to that.
Oh, God.
So the courtroom was filled with Dominique's friends and family, as well as representatives from parents of murdered children, Women Against Violence Against Women.
Okay.
Some kind of palindrome there, I don't know.
Yeah.
And from Victims for Victims. The group started by Teresa Saldana.
Women for Women and Victims for Victims.
The raging bull actress who was brutally stabbed by a deranged fan. Oh, we talked about this on the Rebecca Schaefer episode.
That's right.
Remember there was the TV movie where she played herself.
Yeah.
The judge warned that, quote, if any member of the Dunne family cries out, rolls his eyes, exclaims in any way, he will be asked to leave the courtroom.
Charles Harrelson killed the wrong judge. This guy should have been taken out to the street and beaten in front of everybody and choked for 4 minutes to see how he liked it.
Jesus.
And then let his family go, oh, no, that's just manslaughter. you're only going to have to serve 7 years if you're found guilty, which it's probably less than that.
Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fun.
This is one cat that needs to be put down.
Yeah. Guy needs to be
Judge Katz.
getting slapped nice.
Dominique's friends Brian Cook and Denise Dennehy flew in from Illinois to testify about the time that Sweeney attempted to choke Dominique. They were the ones that were there that one night when she escaped in the car. And so apparently that night they said that she drove to the home of an artist friend named Norman Carby. Carby saw the bruises on her, and it was clear that she had been strangled. And so he decided to take photographs, this artist friend. And so then the pictures were shown by the prosecution to show the seriousness of the crime. But then Adelson said that they didn't mean much because in the same series of photos, in one of them, Dominique is laughing. Then Carby explained that Dominique had told him that she had had a reading that morning for the role of that battered kid on Hill Street Blues. And so Carby had told her that, hey, at least she wouldn't have to wear makeup for it. And that made her laugh.
Ha 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 ha.
So that shows the macabre humor that Griffin was talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I guess it explains why she was laughing in one of the photos. Because honestly, that doesn't prove much because sometimes you have to laugh.
Yeah.
Like, what's the alternative? The world is so evil. Like,
dark.
Sometimes that's just how you deal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Especially if you've been through shit. Yeah, I can see why she would laugh at that.
You gotta laugh sometimes. Death and Entertainment every Wednesday.
That's right.
Wherever you get your podcasts.
And YouTube.
Griffin Dunne wrote extensively about his sister's death in the book we already mentioned, The Friday Afternoon Club. And he says during trial, he was cast in the slapstick crime comedy Johnny Dangerously alongside Michael Keaton.
Somebody killed me once.
And he balanced filming that and attending the trial. So can you imagine you're filming this silly movie?
Yeah.
And then you got to go to your sister's murder trial. David Packer happened to be shooting on the lot next door to Johnny Dangerously. So out of the blue, he sent over a PA to tell Griffin that he wanted to talk to him.
Oh.
And then Griffin could kind of see David back in the corner. And Griffin, instead of talking to the PA, he yelled to David, "Fuck off!" And the next day, Packer took the stand, and his testimony was just as pathetic as his actions were in real life.
Yeah.
Griffin despises this guy.
I would too. I'm not even related. I despise this guy.
And then here's another fascinating tidbit from Griffin's book. He became friendly with a background actor named Leo, who had real-life mafia ties. He'd been into a little of this and a little of that back in New Jersey. One night, he pulled Griffin aside privately and offered to whack John Sweeney. Griffin thought about it for a day, and then he even discussed it with his brother Alex. And then they countered with the idea of possibly just smashing his hands instead.
What?
Because that's how he killed her, and he shouldn't be able to use his hands or cook.
Cut him off.
And then Leo looked at him and said, "Hey, this isn't like adding mushrooms to a pizza. You either say yes or no. We go one direction or we go the other.
No substitution."
And so Griffin told him, although tempting, he politely declined and said he'd never forget the kind gesture. Then Leo told him that he ought to forget about it.
Yeah, for real.
And don't ever talk about it.
Forget about it.
So that's nice, like, because he knew a guy who was in prison with John Sweeney, so they were just going to kill him in his jail cell.
I wonder if it was like a thing that they were like, they don't want that on their conscience, or...
Griffin didn't want it on his conscience.
Or they were being charged money and they didn't want to pay up.
No, this guy was offering for free.
Oh, if it's free, it's for me, baby. Go do it.
And Griffin even made a joke like, or is this the kind of thing where I got to rob a bank for you someday to repay the favor? And Leo laughed. He's like, nah. He's like, I just saw a picture of your ma in the paper. I'll be honest, this is for her.
Wow.
It's something about that woman, man. He's like, I'm touched.
Yeah. He should have taken that up because the dude, I don't want to jump ahead, but I know what happened.
And then another, this is, they didn't name who this was, but apparently an A-list famous person at the funeral also offered to have somebody kill John Sweeney.
Wow. James Woods?
We'll never know, or maybe we will.
We got to look and see who the guest list was that day, waiting outside for that wedding to finish up.
Maybe Robert Wagner.
Ooh, he's like, I've killed people before.
He's like, I know what I'm doing. I'm good at it now.
Yeah. That would probably, it could have been him because he knows he killed a woman. Now he's like, if I kill a guy who killed a woman, now all bets are off. I'm clean.
Oh, yeah, the universe evens out.
Yeah.
Judge Katz delivered another devastating blow to the prosecution. He agreed with a request from Adelson on the defense side that the jury be allowed to consider only charges of manslaughter and second-degree murder, thus acquitting Sweeney of first-degree murder. Adelson argued, there's no premeditation or deliberation in this case, and the judge agreed.
How can he...
And then Barship on the prosecution side argued that the jury should decide whether there was sufficient premeditation or deliberation. And Detective Johnston, who was on the case the entire time, backed him up.
I don't get what's going on here, because if this guy Katz is a star fucker and a clout chaser, this guy Sweeney's a nobody. He's literally a chef at a local restaurant. And the people who have the money are on the other side. They're the ones throwing the parties and upper class.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't get it.
Maybe he was friends with this Shapiro guy who was the attorney of Ma Maison.
Maybe.
Who was also kind of helping Adelson and Sweeney.
God.
Who knows? Yeah, I can't. The judge is acting very irregularly here.
Yeah.
So the judge shot back at those...
Yeah, so they got rid of murder one, and they're only allowing manslaughter or second-degree murder to go through.
Yeah, and so Judge Katz explained that Sweeney had arrived at Dominique's house without a murder weapon. So thus it showed no intent.
All he did was choke her and beat her. He never had a murder weapon.
Exactly.
God.
His hands were the murder weapon.
Catch these hands.
Which is why actually smashing them or cutting them off was a pretty good idea.
Yeah, if you go full Christopher Columbus and you cut them off, I'm with that. But just hitting them with a hammer or something, they'll be fine. Just you got to cut them off.
Go play whack-a-mole with them.
Yeah, you got to give them 2 stumps. They'll never be able to choke anyone again.
So Adelson had never intended to have Sweeney take the stand for obvious reasons. However, when he had to throw out the psychiatric defense to keep the jurors from knowing about Sweeney's previous act of violence against Lillian Pierce, and then also the testimony from Dominique's mom, now he had no choice but to put Sweeney on the stand. And Mr. Sweeney put on a nice guy act. He spoke quietly and was asked multiple times to please raise his voice. He said it was a crime of passion and denied the previous assaults, claiming that he'd only tried to restrain her from leaving the house.
Yeah, okay.
And then he admitted they had separated after that and that she had the locks changed so that he could not get back into the house. But he insisted that she had promised to reconcile with him and that her refusal to do so was what brought about the murder. Or in his words, the accident, whatever he calls it.
Yeah.
And he also claimed that he could not remember the night of the murder. And then after the attack, Sweeney said that he had entered the house and attempted to kill himself by swallowing 2 bottles of pills. And as I mentioned before, there's no evidence that ever happened. So he was trying to paint it like she was leading him on and playing games with his heart.
My God.
And he went on to slander her name, saying she cruelly rejected him and insinuating that she was a party girl like they did with the other, with the ex-girlfriend.
Yeah.
And that she did coke and drank. So it's the same thing they were trying to paint his ex-girlfriend Lillian Pierce as, this party girl.
Yeah.
And the family said that it was like having her being murdered a second time to hear all this about her in court.
Yeah.
Dominique's friend Melinda came across a letter while closing up her friend's house before the funeral. And the letter was written from her to Sweeney. And it was read aloud during the prosecution's closing argument. And here's a little excerpt from it. Quote, "You do not love me, you're obsessed with me. The person you think you love is not me at all. It's someone you've made up in your head. The whole thing has made me realize how scared I am of you. And I don't mean just physically. I'm afraid of the next time you're going to have another mood swing."
Yeah. And they were allowed to read that?
Yeah, during the closing argument.
Wow, I'm surprised it was even allowed.
And during that entire closing argument, Judge Katz was playing hangman.
What the fuck is wrong with this
looking
guy?
less than interested in what Stephen Barship was saying.
Oh my goodness, this guy sucks.
However, when Adelson was delivering his closing remarks for the defense side, Judge Katz gave him his full attention.
What?
Could the jury perhaps have been swayed by seeing the judge's apparent disinterest?
It happened in the Karen Reed trial too. That judge was doing the same
piece of work.
Yeah.
And in their closing argument, Sweeney was described as an ordinarily reasonable person.
Okay.
Leaving the courtroom during a break, Dominic found himself right next to Adelson in the aisle. And so he whispered to him, "You piece of shit." And then Adelson got angry and said, "Hey, Your Honor, he's calling me names."
Oh, my God.
And luckily, Dominic didn't kicked out for that because he just denied saying it.
I didn't say it.
So this is another thing from Griffin's book. One day, the family and friends of Dominique were having lunch at a restaurant called the Ivy. And their friend Melinda, who had found the letter and testified, they were reminiscing about the time that she and Dominique had kidnapped/rescued Robin Williams, all in good fun, from a party. The scenario was they entered this party where they knew he was at, and Williams was hanging out with all these old comics, Borscht Belt and Don Rickles, and Dom DeLuise, all that.
Yeah.
And Robin at the time was this hot young comic. So hey, you want to come with us? And he's like, sure, where are we going? The girls take him back to their house, and inside, for some reason, there's a giant teddy bear. So then Robin Williams proceeded to do this entire routine with the teddy bear where Robin was Teddy Roosevelt.
Oh, God.
And then he said, "Hey, don't call me Teddy." And then he started fucking the bear from behind and performing fellatio and all that jazz. And everyone was roaring.
Yeah.
And so when they're talking about the story, the table erupted with laughter. And Griffin noted that it was a nice relief for everyone, given the weight of the trial, to let off a little steam.
You guys remember when Robin Williams fucked my teddy bear?
And then...
in front of the whole family?
But then Griffin noticed that the jury members were sitting at a nearby table, and they were looking on with disgust. So that sort of expression like, look at all you rich people.
Oh.
Why are you laughing right now? All that privilege and money and your lifestyle. And he knew at that moment that they weren't going to rule in their favor.
Wow.
So Judge Katz read the instructions to the jury explaining second-degree murder and voluntary manslaughter and involuntary manslaughter. And apparently he didn't do such a good job because later the jury foreman said that the judge's instructions were incomprehensible.
Inconceivable.
And when they went back to him for further explanation or to clarify anything, he said, "It's all there in the instructions." The jury deliberated for 8 days. The night before the verdict, Dominic turned on the TV for the first time in a while, and Poltergeist happened to be playing on cable.
Why wouldn't it be?
And it was the scene where she says, "What's happening?" And he turned to the TV and said, "I don't know what's happening, my darling," and then began sobbing.
God. Did it happen? Probably not.
Hey, you are really against him writing about his experience at the trial. I, of course, am getting many of these details from his account of it.
Well, of course.
Well, let's get to the verdict. This isn't going to make you feel any better, though.
Nope.
September 21st, 1983. So almost a year after the murder. Voluntary manslaughter.
Yeah.
And then the earlier choking attack, a misdemeanor assault. The maximum sentence for both charges, 6.5 years.
Oh, isn't that great?
And then he'll be automatically paroled when he has served half his sentence without having to go through a parole hearing. And then the time he had already spent in jail was considered time spent.
Jesus. So he spent like a year and a half in jail?
So Sweeney would be free in 2.5 years.
Oh, my God.
Judge Katz excused the jury and thanked them on behalf of both families and attorneys.
So on behalf my ass, you're not doing it on behalf of my side.
He declared that justice had been served. And then Dominic shouted, "Not for our family, Judge Katz."
I hope he actually said that.
Kyle, he couldn't make that up. There are witnesses.
People can make up
He
a lot of
shouted
stuff.
this. This is legendary.
Oh, so he did.
He did shout this.
Good for him then.
Come on, Kyle.
I'll give him his flowers.
Oh, you sound like Chris Todd.
Yep.
Yeah, well, I'll give you flowers too. Right up your ass.
Hello.
There was media outrage over the verdict. On the day of sentencing, there were picket signs outside, protesters, and even people outside Ma Maison.
Oh, no.
People were singing and marching outside the courthouse. This was in Santa Monica, by the way.
Uh-huh.
And so here we are now at the sentencing. After friends and family from both sides took the stand to plead their cases, Judge Katz surprised everyone by pulling a 180 and blasted the jurors over their unjust verdict. Quote, "I will state on the record that I believe this is a murder. I believe that Sweeney is a murderer and not a manslaughterer. This is a killing with malice."
Katz said this.
Yes.
What? This guy gets worse and worse.
You want to know why? Because there was
backlash.
Yes.
Oh my God.
So now he's acting like he was on the right side of history.
He was playing hangman during the fucking closing statements.
Every step of the way, he hampered the prosecution's efforts.
Yeah. This guy.
And he had been on track to join the California Supreme Court, and this killed those ambitions. This was not good for his career, obviously. And
good.
Thankfully.
Yeah. It's so brazen. These people who just do stuff out in public and they feel like they have no chance of having repercussions.
And you know what's interesting is the jury members only learned of Lillian Pierce, the ex-girlfriend, after the verdict because they could only know about it legally afterwards.
Yeah.
Needless to say, Sweeney did receive the maximum punishment, which wasn't much.
No.
And in a post-sentencing interview, the jury foreman said the jury would certainly have found Sweeney guilty of murder if they had heard all the evidence. And he said that he believed that Sweeney deserved life in prison.
Yeah.
But Sweeney would only end up serving 2.5 years. He was out in 1987. After his release, Sweeney was hired at the Chronicle, an upscale restaurant in Santa Monica. Dominique's family passed out flyers to the customers that read, quote, "The food you ate tonight was cooked by the hands that killed Dominique Dunne."
Wow.
His tenure there was short-lived. Producer Charles Wessler, who was a family friend, went on a mission to haunt Sweeney and got him fired from at least 7 jobs.
7?
Sweeney...
How the hell did these guys keep getting hired?
Well, you know, he's a go-getter.
My God.
Seize the day, my friend.
Oh.
Sweeney eventually fled the LA area, and Ma Maison closed in 1985. The Hollywood clientele stopped going because of its association with the murder.
Good.
Much like Mezzaluna closed after...
O.J. Simpson.
Yes. Dominic the donkey,
hired
Donkey...
Jiggity jig.
Okay, I don't know.
Dominic the donkey.
He hired P.I. Anthony Pellicano to follow Sweeney around and track his movements. And he obsessed over Sweeney's whereabouts and even fantasized about revenge. But then after a period of time, the family decided it was time to move on with their lives. So he said that Alex went to live with their mom in California, get his college degree. Griffin returned to New York to film After Hours. Great movie.
Yeah.
And then Lenny founded the group Justice for Homicide Victims, which was honored by President George H.W. Bush.
H.W.
And she became friends with Sharon Tate's mom.
Oh, wow.
And they did advocacy together. Dominique's account of the trial was published as Justice, a father's account of the trial of his daughter's killer, in the March 1984 issue of Vanity Fair. He would go on to cover all the major true crime stories for Vanity Fair after that, including O.J. and the Menendez brothers.
Timely.
And I even took the title from his article for our podcast episode.
Oh.
A Nightmare on Elm Drive.
Yes.
As a Freddy Krueger fanatic, is that not brilliant?
It's brilliant.
Dominic also wrote crime novels and hosted the TV show Power, Privilege, and Justice on Court TV. So he had always aspired to be famous and finally got his wish.
Wow, his daughter cashing some more of his checks for him.
Well, hold on, though. Or you could say it transformed him. Like it made him the advocate, the voice for the voiceless,
He should have just kicked the shit out of this guy that was in his daughter's life before he had the chance to do anything.
This might not be the best comparison, but it's kind of like how William S. Burroughs became the legendary author that everyone knows today because he shot his wife, Joan Vollmer, in a William Tell accident.
Oh, boy.
He said, hey, I bet I can shoot the shot glass off your head.
Oh, God.
And they were at a party, and she's like, okay. She puts it on her head, and he shoots her right in the face. And he said he would have never become an author if not for that incident.
Oh.
So sometimes it takes a tragedy to be reborn.
Was Judge Katz his judge, too?
Oh.
Christ.
Come on, Naked Lunch.
My God.
No, but I mean, that is fascinating, isn't it? He was a failed Hollywood producer, and then he became one of the most influential true crime novelists ever.
Wow.
Like, he very much was ahead of his time. Nowadays, everyone's doing true crime.
Yeah. Look at us.
But he was there first. Yeah. And his writing is brilliant. You should go back and read his articles, his essays, if you will.
Wow.
They're very good.
Wow.
So this story has regained some steam in the zeitgeist recently because Dominique Dunne and Dominic are featured in Monsters.
The Menendez story.
Yeah, and so he's portrayed by Nathan Lane in the series.
Mr. Dunne, I just wanted to say I'm so sorry about what happened to your daughter. I loved her in Poltergeist. It was like one of my favorite movies as a kid.
Haven't seen it in years.
Reminds me of when it's a famous story where who was it? Somebody went up to John Lovitz after Phil Hartman was murdered and was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear about Phil." And Lovitz goes, "Why? What happened?"
Oh, that's
He's like,
good.
"Oh, he was murdered." And he goes, "Oh, that."
That's funny.
Mr. Dunne, I just wanted to say I'm so sorry about what happened to your daughter. I loved her in Poltergeist. It was like one of my favorite movies as a kid.
Haven't seen it in years. Can't bring myself to watch it.
Yeah.
Then he goes,
it was Ed O'Neill. I remembered that. Went up to John and was like, "I'm so sorry to hear about Phil." What? Why? What happened? "Oh, he was murdered." "Oh, that."
Ed O'Neill also had the story of Chris Farley putting his dog in a sub bun or something.
Yeah, and eating it, pretending to eat it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah,
But that scene, it's so like, obviously this never happened.
Yeah.
This moment after this party where a caterer is like, "Mr. Dunne."
Yeah.
But Nathan Lane goes on to say, "My daughter's killer was set free." He gives every detail of the entire case in that scene.
A little exposition.
Yeah, exactly. Like a soliloquy.
A little lazy writing. Show, don't tell.
Exactly.
Yeah, what are you going to do?
Nothing.
Yeah.
Years later, a man in Florida who had read one of Dominic's essays contacted him to say that his daughter was engaged to be married to a man named John Sweeney, who was a chef working at a top restaurant in Seattle. And he's like, "Is this the same John Sweeney?" And Dominic's like, "Yeah, that's him."
Wow.
So he hadn't told his fiance that he'd been to prison or that he killed a girl.
What the
and
hell?
Luckily, the marriage did not take place.
Good.
And then he would tell people that Dominic was harassing him.
Why is he calling Dominic when he could just look on the news or in a newspaper to be like, "Is this the same guy?"
Because he's a star fucker.
Oh, God.
So John Sweeney's last known whereabouts are in San Rafael, California, where he's apparently working as food director at a nursing home. And he's changed his name to John Mora.
Yes. John Mora.
And then Lenny Dunne died in 1997 due to complications of MS. We talked about Dominique's uncle, John, who died of a heart attack in 2003. Then Joan Didion wrote The Year of Magical Thinking about him. And Dominique himself died in August 2009 of bladder cancer. And when his son Griffin was visiting him in the hospital in 2008, Dominique revealed that he had been in a long-term secret relationship with artist Norman Ward.
He's a man, baby.
And Norman Ward is the man that Dominique ran to, the house she went to the night she was running away from Sweeney.
Wow.
And he made the joke about Hill Street Blues not needing to give her much makeup.
Yeah.
So that was actually Dominique's lover.
Wow.
And Dominique admitted that Dominique knew that they were lovers and never told her brothers.
Wow. Goddamn.
Yeah.
So that's what I was kind of getting at. I was asking because I didn't know.
So he's
with him being a chatty Cathy in the arts.
Well, you can be
a little sassy to his son.
You can be a sassy straight,
I guess.
He flies every which way, Kyle. They call it pansexual.
Yes, the door that swings both ways swings most often, they say.
Yes. I mean, it's sad, though, because Norman told Griffin that I know everything about you boys, but you know nothing about me. Chew on that.
You're like, you got some cum on your face there, Dad. Well, did you know about this? That before he changed his name to John Mora, he actually had committed another domestic violence attack, and it was in the year 2000. A woman complained that John Sweeney, back in 2000, she was dragged by her ponytail through a hotel lobby, had her head shoved in a bathtub, pushed against a wall, and even choked by Sweeney. Filed a restraining order against him, but the police refused to press charges.
That happened in 2000?
Yep.
Yeah, that's funny because I was about to play this TMZ clip.
Oh, really?
Yeah, play it. It's funny. Harvey Levin.
Yes.
Very dramatic about this.
He served 2.5 years. Guess what? We found out something else. When he got out in 2.5 years, after he got out, he did it to another woman, another girlfriend, who ended up running for her life.
Oh, my God. It sounds like just a monster.
Yeah. What a bag of shit.
Dominique, an angel, is buried in Westwood Cemetery near Natalie Wood.
Right at UCLA.
Family friend and also victim to a horrible tragedy.
Wow.
That brings us to
Final thoughts.
What do you got there, Kyle? What are you thinking?
Oh my God. These stories will never cease to happen. People don't realize how deep in shit they are when they're with someone who is this out of control. Family members, the person that are in it, it's hard to imagine that it's going to end in a murder. But if you are seeing signs where someone is totally unhinged and committing violence against another person in a relationship, you need to get as far away from them as you possibly can and document everything. Unless you have a friend that's in the mafia who says, we'll whack them for free, then just do that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, document everything.
And you could live with that.
Oh, absolutely. If someone killed my sister and someone came up to me and was like, oh, we'll get this guy while he's awaiting trial, I'd be like, yeah, go right ahead. Make it hurt.
Because that's what the movie In the Bedroom is all about.
Yeah.
With Sissy Spacek and Tom Wilkinson.
Sissy, speaking of David Packer.
Where their son is killed and they have the killer murdered.
Yeah.
But then it shows them the morning after the murder is done and they don't look any happier.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to make you completely fulfilled, but it'll give you at least a little peace of mind that it's not going to happen to anyone else.
And speaking of David Packer, I have a couple blind items you might like.
Oh, wow.
He
is a Packer?
He was Dominique's secret lover. No.
Oh, man, I would have believed it, actually.
Come on.
A guy prancing around, not calling 911 because he's scared to get killed himself.
Oh my God. All right.
Sissy spacing.
Because he had been on an uphill ladder. I guess all ladders are uphill in Hollywood.
Sure.
But the murder really affected him. And he decided...
The almost murder of himself affected him, I think.
He decided to give it all up. And now he is a call center supervisor.
What?
So that's a little... update on him.
Bullshit. He's got an IMDb that's still... He was on the Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt.
He was?
Yeah.
Why would Tina Fey work with him?
Is that Tina Fey's show?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. He was in Almost Heroes in 1998. He was in RoboCop.
Yeah, but that's a long time ago now.
Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. Yeah, okay. So that was in 2015. That was the last thing he did.
You can't get over Kimmy Schmidt.
Well, I mean, that's the newest thing he was in.
You're like, this guy's rich. He was in Kimmy Schmidt.
He was in one episode as the voice of the GPS, but I don't care.
Yeah. There you go, Kyle. That sounds like a huge, lucrative role.
I don't care.
Not even in person. He didn't even have to crawl from under Dominique's bed to phone in that role.
Exactly.
And you'll like this last blind item here. It's about John Sweeney.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, at the nursing home he works at, he's scamming the old people.
Oh, that's fun.
And that he's been able to keep his latest name change ever since Dominic died in 2009 because he was his main harasser, as he calls it.
Yeah, I mean, they had a private investigator following him around, and then he gave up.
Yeah.
Because it was too much.
So he befriends these old people there that have no relatives, and he gets them to leave him everything when they pass on and milks them of their life savings.
What a fucking scumbag.
So he's still at it.
Jesus Christ.
Leo, if you're listening, the background actor from Johnny Dangerously.
Yeah, Leo.
I say do it.
Just do it. Or if John Mora's listening and he wants to catch some hands from a guy, let's do a celebrity boxing match between me and you, pal.
And in the audience, I want David Packer.
Yes. So I can fucking smack him too on the way out. God.
Well, what did we learn today?
We learned that people are bitches, and Dominique was done dirty by a lot of people close to her and the judicial system as well. And by the planners of the funeral, the drunk friggin' priest as well. Didn't even block off the time for her and booked a wedding and was like, well, we got push it back an hour.
Yeah, the wine guzzling Monsignor.
She was failed by everyone, even her father, who was, using her for money at the very end there. And
okay, but hold on. By all accounts, the Dunne family became closer.
After she died?
Because of the trial.
So?
Well, they had a strong bond afterwards in the fight for justice.
Good for them. Okay. He was driving her car around after.
Because he couldn't afford the rent one. What do you want him to do?
Exactly.
Walk?
No, get a goddamn job and stop spending all your money on frivolous bullshit to keep up with the Joneses.
Oh, that's interesting because when Tina Brown offered him a job, he accepted it. And he performed that job until his death.
What? Just
writing for Vanity Fair.
Yeah, after he exploited his daughter's case?
Not exploited. He got it out. He got it out in the consciousness.
I don't know.
He got it out in the world and told people of the atrocity that had taken place.
He should have murdered his daughter's murderer.
Oh, please.
Instead of sitting there writing about O.J. Simpson.
Why?
Buddy, you got someone who killed your daughter walking around scamming people in nursing homes. Time to kill him.
This is a hot take.
Yeah.
Because Dominique Dunne is, like I said, he's a celebrated author.
Yeah. He could have been a celebrated person and been...
So wait, you want him to just not write about his daughter's trial? Is that what you want?
I want him to not write about his daughter's trial.
I'm glad he did.
And I want him to go kill his daughter's killer.
Oh, you're so full of it.
What are you talking about?
What about Rebecca? Oh, wait, you did slam Rebecca Shaver's mom.
Yeah.
You didn't tell her to kill, what's his name, Bardo.
I mean...
John Bardo.
He at least got a fitting sentence.
I guess. Oh. They should have put him to death, too.
Yeah. Oh, what are we going to do?
And Meanwhile, John Hinckley is free and has a hit YouTube channel.
Yeah, we got to invite him on the show.
I think this is a fitting time to give a slight preview for next week's episode, which is somewhat related to this week's episode.
Ooh, what episode is that?
If you think you've heard everything, just listen to this little tease.
They're here.
Ooh.
We haven't even begun to get into the curse of Poltergeist.
Bum, bum, bum.
You just heard chapter 1.
Ooh.
But there's something else I hear.
You've got mail.
Oh, we've got some mail. Did you know that?
Well, I heard the...
Oh, you heard the drop.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. That makes sense. We got some great reviews here on Apple. And Berkshire says, my favorite podcast, said, I found this show a couple of months ago before a long drive at night and have been hooked ever since. The show topics are riveting, the hosts are hilarious, and play off each other so well. They say, if you don't give it a try, you're making the biggest mistake of your life. You just don't know it yet.
Wow.
That's impressive.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah, that's keep the mail coming, because you can also text the show, and we have some stuff over there. Someone said over there to eat shit. So that's fun.
Oh, so we're getting mixed.
Yeah, it's always mixed.
Not really. I feel like it's mainly positive.
It is mainly positive, but...
Even on Kurt Cobain, someone had a problem with Chris Todd's theory, but then said, I have to admit, though, I love you guys. I love the hosts.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It wasn't eat shit. It says, I want to take a dump in your mouth. So...
Wait, that's way better than eat shit.
Well, you would be eating shit.
No, but isn't that kind of like a compliment? Maybe that's their thing.
You know?
Maybe that's what turns them on.
We don't know.
So that would be an honor then.
Yeah, maybe.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, we do have a lot more, but well,
Yeah, of course. We thank you. We love you.
We can't get into everything because the Kurt Cobain and alone that has
yeah, exactly.
ton of responses that are very interesting.
Yeah, people get mad. So there was someone that was furious that we inferred that Courtney Love had anything to do with it.
Oh, yeah. They said something like, I find it like awful when people
blame Courtney. It's like, yeah, that's the first person everybody blames. Not thinking she had anything to do with it is the hot take. So we're not treading new ground there.
And also, what's the alternative? Should we just have a boring show where we never say anything controversial or...
Yeah, I love like the theory episodes when people will be like, stick to the facts. And it's like, there are no facts. There are just narratives.
Exactly.
So that's all we can do is talk about the different narratives that people have.
Although this episode, I have to say, was fairly straightforward.
Yes.
There wasn't a lot of room for conspiracy here.
That's true.
All right, well, keep sending us fan mail or hate mail.
Do whatever.
Give us a rating if you're listening on Spotify.
Yeah.
Also Apple. You know the drill.
Yeah.
Get our name out there and give us 5 stars.
That's right.
And until next week.
Don't go dying on us.
Bye.
You have just heard
a true Hollywood murder mystery.
I have never seen anything like this before.
The movies, Broadway, music, television, all of it.
A place that manufactures nightmares.
Okay, everybody, that's a wrap.
Good night. Please drive home carefully and come back again soon.